Hey guys, welcome to Power Within with me, Amy, your heart whisperer therapist. I'm a good wife.
Vicky, I'm the queen of rapid hypnosis.
Together with the Eastwoods, and we're going to be covering therapy,
Hypnotherapy,
couples relationship therapy,
hypnosis, and all the other shit in between.
If it's current, if it's relevant,
we'll be covering it. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to Power Within. Today we're going to dive a little bit deeper about anxiety and the breath work and anything else that could help you move forward.
Yeah, for anyone that watched or listened to our episode maybe 8 or 9 weeks ago, we talked about anxiety. And the messages that came in afterwards was humbling, but also just reminds us how much anxiety kicks in for almost each and every one of you. It appears differently, it holds on to you differently, but it doesn't mean that's not what it is.
Yeah, and explain what anxiety is.
Yeah, for most, if we was to just do a generic what it means, it's that overwhelming feeling of fear, the panic, the sweat, the being out of control. And for some, because anxiety is healthy to a degree, you know, let's be real. If we removed anxiety from all our lives, we'd probably go back to cave days where we'd be touching fire or jumping off buildings or whatever it be. So anxiety does keep us safe. I think the alarming thing that we come across when we're doing our work is how much anxiety can hold on to people.
But it is a flight, fight or hide response as well.
Yeah, and the hide being avoid. That's what I tend to find. And the more we avoid, the bigger it becomes. It almost can sometimes creep into a fear sort of state.
Because you're trying to keep yourself safe. That's what anxiety is doing, is trying to keep you safe from all the other things out there. But then when anxiety does creep in, I think people end up going into, again, the state of panic where they have to remove themselves from that place. And again, this is when breath work does come in, and it is quite important to learn about breath work.
Yeah, because if you're fortunate enough to have it under control, or fortunate enough to go to therapy, whether it's doing CBT or hypnotherapy, whatever it be, then great, because you learn to regulate yourself anyway. But for anyone that doesn't, or doesn't have the funds or the time, breathwork's probably the most natural way to reground yourself, to re-regulate your nervous system. And that's effectively anxiety is just creeping up and up, where you get that sense of being out of control. To some people, it gets so fiercely out of control, it will lead to a panic attack. I've had a client once describe it that she thought she was physically dying. And it came because she had a meeting at work, and the anxiety that she put on herself, obviously not intentionally, but the anxiety she had because of a meeting that she was meant to lead, it became a panic attack to the point she sat on the office floor thinking she was dying, which is extreme, but clearly not nice if you were her.
Going back to the guy what I had for public speaking, I ended up creating him an anchor point. So even if he touched his cuffs before he did public speaking, that created him a confident feeling deep inside where he could block out any other noises, any other fears, any other worries around him. So that was his grounding technique. So when he stood up on stage and that fear came over him, and when he could feel himself like going into a bit of a panic attack, he could just touch his cuffs, and then all of a sudden that fear and that feeling just faded out, which is quite powerful. And it sounds mental, but that actually is a thing. Again, for people who has anxiety, even children at school, it's your finger and thumb. So they can be in classroom and they can place that finger and thumb together, and that feeling of anxiety can just pass.
And I think that's the incredible part of it, because as quickly as anxiety can take over somebody, with the right technique, with the right breathing, the right support, it can wash out as well.
I got him to tap his watch as well. So the different guy, because he didn't really wear cuffs. You know, he had like his sleeves rolled up. So I did it where he had a watch, and he used to love his watch. So I thought I'm going to incorporate the watch with the anchor point. So every time he tapped his watch, it was like an armor of like an armor what just filled him. So like nothing could come to him and disrupt his speech, and feeling that confidence throughout.
Yeah, and if you remember, obviously, the boy that I talked about with sickness, he had this almighty anxiety around the feeling of being sick, but he never knew where it come from. And we see them quite often now. And even the other day, we sort of complimented the mum, because not knowing what hypnotherapy was, not knowing that it could be undone, I guess his anchor point was the Tic Tacs. Because when he would say he felt sick, it was more like a social anxiety creeping in, but that's how he would describe it. His anchor point would have been them Tic Tacs, and what his subconscious was feeling was almost like the Tic Tac was a medicine. We all know it's not, but that was able to contain him. And so when I did that work with him, I said, you know, one day when he's at uni or traveling the world, when we're not local to him, that feeling of that Tic Tac, that's his power. He can do that anywhere he goes. And you and me both know, and we see him grow. He's so loud and confident now. Like it's...
But the Tic Tacs have faded out and become irrelevant to him as well. That's the other part. Is so it's not where after a while you might not need that anchor point, because you've already overcome that fear without actually realising you've overcome that fear. So like before you know the business guys, he didn't need to probably tap his watch. He's, in all fairness, I've not seen him for a while now, actually. But again, he messaged and said his speech went really, really well. He never felt the pressure, and it felt like it did give him like an armour, because that's how he created it, as like a bodysuit of armour, which was quite cool.
Yeah, and I think one of the other parts with anxiety is the acknowledgement of it. Because, and this might resonate with some people or it might not, but even when we go back to your social anxiety, you used to just hide it so well that you deal with it on your own. Where at least now, if I'm aware, I can look in a room or a situation, and although you would never want to take us out of it, at least I'm aware what's going on for you if you do pull back a little bit.
Yeah, but I never need you to know that. I can just nip off to the toilet, do my breath work, think, right, okay, let's get back out there. And that's that's the reason why I say breath work is so important to create, to do, to learn. So when you are in them situations, you can just say, just give me 5 minutes and I'll just nip off. Sometimes getting even just a bit of fresh air outside, just to feel that calm, is all what I needed.
But acknowledging it and sharing it with your close friends.
I've never told people about it. Okay. It's only because since doing hypnotherapy and therapy, when people are talking about it, you go, wow, like I can't believe that all these feelings you're telling me is exactly how I feel. So I never realised I had social anxiety, because going back to the 80s, anxiety was never like this word what was thrown around. It's not so much that it's getting thrown around now, but it's where people are acknowledging, actually, I have got anxiety. It is something what's creeping in. That's the reason why I do feel different, because I always used to wonder why I used to feel that certain way, even at school, activities, when I had to read out in class. Oh my God, like my life was like ending, because I felt like the classroom was getting smaller and smaller. So to feel that, and even now, even in my older age, that still does happen. But that's the reason why I do like hypnotherapy and that one-on-one client, or like 1 in 3 or 4 clients, if there's a few of them. I like working with people. I like seeing that change. And that gives me a little bit of positivity, really.
But if you had a client with anxiety, minus you, with how you deal with it, you would predominantly say to them, share it, because by saying it out loud, it takes away the pressure that it holds. And imagine 40 years ago, if you were at school and the teacher had the ability to understand how much anxiety was created from getting, because probably not you, probably at least a third of your class back then would have got some form of anxiety by standing up in front of the class.
Yeah.
So imagine you go to school and the teacher was very aware of what it was and said, this is a feeling that some of you will get. It's perfectly normal. And we get to express it. You wouldn't have probably felt as isolated as you did, because you probably at that age thought, why do I feel like this? Instead of, why do half of the class feel like this?
But again, a lot of people are not used to talking, are they? They're not used to expressing how they feel. They probably just go into themselves. And yeah, it is best to voice it. It is best to talk. I think I didn't tell you until probably, 4 or 5 years ago. Because it was something what I never really thought I suffered with. I didn't know why I felt uncomfortable in people's presence sometimes. But again, it might go back to energy vampires. It might go back to them.
Do you think?
Sometimes, yeah. When I'm in like a room full of people, sometimes I just need to like get out of there. But maybe it's because I feel quite good. And maybe I'm not sure. We'll figure that out.
Or we won't. We'll continue to figure it out for everybody else. But like, even, do you want to cover some of this breath work? Because it is powerful. And I think, like Vicky, if she takes herself out of a busy environment, even for 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes you'll either pretend you're going to the bar or you go to the toilet. And it's almost like you do come back refreshed. So when we share the breath work, not only from like a client point of view, but from a personal experience, you know it works. You know this benefits you. And so it could happen and help a lot of other people out there if they're not seeking therapy, sort of.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before about the 4-4-4, where you take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then release for 4 seconds. And that seems to regulate my heart back to where it should be, which I find quite powerful. It's probably the one what I normally do most of all. And another technique, what we tend to do, you tend to use this quite often, is a 4-7-8. So you inhale for 4, you hold for 7, and then you release for 8 as you exhale. This is normally good at night time, to just relax your mind and repeat that 4 or 5 times. And that's always a good technique to use.
Yeah, and it helps to regulate you. It slows your heart rate down, lowers your blood pressure, and it triggers a relaxation. So even if you are up there, just by focusing on your breathing for a couple of minutes, as boring as it sounds or as plain as that sounds, you can self-regulate, regardless of therapy, regardless of medications. Your breath work is the easiest, quickest way to ground you.
Yeah, it is a very good grounding technique. But again, when you're laid in bed at night and you're probably thinking and worrying about tomorrow, that's good, because you're laid down. The 4-7-8 is the better technique when you are in bed. The 4-4-4, if you are out in public and you are sort of out and about, the 4-4-4 seems to work better if you're just like nipping into
because it makes you focus a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like some of the stuff that we've gone through or initially wanted to share today was when anxiety becomes excessive. And this is some of the therapeutic stuff we would then do. And it's about challenging their negative thoughts. Like, people with high anxiety will think of the worst case scenario almost always. And if that's you, or if that's you a little bit, I want you to challenge that thought the other way. Like, what is the worst that's going to happen? If your biggest fear happens, break it down. What is the worst that's going to happen? So if I said, well, if I go out today and it's busy on the road and I'm anxious in the car, there's too much traffic, what if I crash? Okay, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? I might get hurt. well, what's the worst that happens if I get hurt? I cut myself or I break a bone or I end up in hospital. Okay, break that further down. Then you can start to realise the probability of that event. How many times do you drive anyway? How many times have you crashed and ended up in hospital? Never. I've never been in hospital with a car crash. So why is that thought so intrusive?
Because it's the overthinking part of anxiety as well. People have the tendency to overthink, especially overthinkers. Overthinking. So it is, and it's not even a bad thing, because I overthink quite a lot of scenarios, but I've managed to start and regulate instead of worrying about what could be and what ifs, because that's the hardest part of anxiety is, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I do end up in a car accident? What if someone's driving and it's just a continuous following that suit, where stop thinking about the what ifs. Go to the positive side of what ifs, about getting to that destination, enjoying that time, enjoy seeing family, enjoy seeing friends, becoming a part of that social, what's always had that fear behind, because of the what ifs. Because otherwise you're not living. You've got to go out and live, enjoy your life.
Yeah, I think probably easier said than done if somebody is in a high alert more often than not. And, you know, some of the clients we've seen, what are you smiling at?
No, I'm just laughing because obviously one of my friends, everything, well, what if this happens? Vic, what I'm going to do? What if this? Stop worrying about the what ifs.
I guess you learn to really deal with it if it happens. Because I guess the more you avoid something, the bigger the what ifs become.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've shared it before, and if we're repeating anything and you've saw the last anxiety clips, then apologies. But when we talk about one of our staff members at work, her big anxiety is around health. Well, what happens if I get ill and I'd get this? But she's sitting in that worry, and it absolutely consumes her day-to-day life, where she won't travel or she won't embrace life with the kids because that fear just holds her back.
But then she did book somewhere with a partner, and then she was panicking. As far-fetched as it was, well, do you think I need to do a will? What happens if the plane crashes? What happens if this? And again, it's just a normal scenario. What actually people do worry about it. That is the anxiety, and hers was always about death. So I think just before we end her shift, I said to her, listen, if you've just got 10 minutes, just come and see me. And I said to her, because she didn't want to go in hypnosis, she was scared of even being hypnotized. I'm like, okay, so let me just go and just relax your body, and just go and just listen to the sound of my voice. And as she's gone into the back and she sat down, because she works for us and because we are friends, I didn't tell her that she was going into hypnosis. But hypnosis is not that scary. All it is, you are very aware. You're aware of your surroundings. You're aware of what I'm saying. So there's nothing to be scared about. So I just relaxed all her body from top of her head down to her tips of her toes, and just told her to listen to the sound of my voice. And as she started to relax, I could see her head just drop in, and I'm like, okay. And then I did a little bit of parts therapy with her. It took me 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And as I've just counted her out of hypnosis, she wasn't too deep, because, like I said, I do need to speak to her as well. But she said she never felt so good. She felt amazing. And then I said to her, you was in hypnosis there? And she's like, was I? I said, well, yeah, all it is just a nice, deep relaxation feeling. It's just a calm sensation what just flows through your body. I says, but then you're more open to all these suggestions. And she's like, oh, she goes, I'm glad you didn't tell me that I was going to go in hypnosis, because I would have panicked about going in hypnosis. I says, well, how do you feel now? She went, I'll do that again. And she loved every bit of it, where then she flew out with a boyfriend and she had the best time, and she never worried about her children.
She actually didn't want to come back. She didn't want to come back. And again, it's something that she should be embracing. Her kids are at an age where they were looked after and safe. And it's time that she's not really had with a partner, and she had a great time. And come back and didn't want to come back that day. So,
and that shows you because she didn't even want to go originally. So although she's booked it and she was kind of looking forward to it, the anxiety even leading up to it, she started, should I go? Shall I not go? And then she had the best time.
Yeah, so cycles and behaviours are breakable. That's the ultimate thing for a lot of people. And we'll go back to the same cycle that we see, is they'll get diagnosed with anxiety. They don't know what to do with it. They go to the doctor, and the only thing the doctor does is prescribe medication.
And that's the thing, because I've seen a few people what's been on medication. Obviously we do ask them that before they start the hypnotherapy side, and it is prescribed a lot for anxiety. But then I ask them how they feel on this medication. It just says they feel numb. They don't have any feelings. They don't really feel any emotion, which is quite sad, really. And I always say to them, I'm not a doctor to tell you to come off your medication or to wean off your medication. Go speak to your doctor, see what they say. Have a couple of hypnosis sessions and see how you feel. And before you know it, they have come off the medication, but obviously they've been back to the doctor. The doctor says, well, just come off it slowly but surely. And when they message you and say, I'm actually not on this medication anymore, it's quite humbling that you've helped them with the power of suggestion change. But the people what do the change is them.
Yeah, and that was always the idea of power within. Because although we'll call it a name or a brand, the name behind it is you. And whether that sounds cheesy or not, any work we do, I've said it earlier, their messages when people are weaning off medication, when they are feeling incredible, when they have overcome fears, when they are now living the life that they've deserved for maybe 10, 20 years, although it's lovely to hear, it's thanks to us. It's not really.
Yeah,
the biggest challenge for anyone out there is reaching out to a therapist. And I will always reply to every client, whether we work with them or not. And I don't know if it sounds patronising, because I always say, well done for reaching out. Because I can only imagine that is the hardest part of getting your life back on track. Reaching out and putting your trust into somebody you don't know.
But if you don't feel them either as well, if you get to a therapist or a hypnotherapist, you God, it wasn't really for me. But go in there open-minded. Don't go in there thinking, this is not going to work. Go in there thinking, yes, as long as you're open-minded and willing, the changes will happen. But it's not going to be you walking out and you're a complete new person. It takes time. Like I say, it's always about that seed, what gets planted, and that seed then grows.
So, sometimes, though, they'll walk out one session in and they'll feel incredible.
Feel lightheaded.
Relaxed, content. They've gone exactly where you've asked them to go in their mind. And they do feel incredible. Like, I had one lady text me on the evening afterwards, she said, I don't know what you've done to me today. I could only liken the feeling to having a lovely dinner and 3 glasses of wine. She felt like she was floating, and everybody's different. Hypnotherapy, therapy, you're not all going to walk out with the same response. But when we pull this back to anxiety, if you was to score yourself out of 10 on a worst case scenario, where would your anxiety be?
10 being the maximum.
10 being the maximum. And some of the breathing work can bring that down. Therapy and hypnotherapy massively brings it down. I think a healthy level of anxiety would be maybe a 2, because it keeps us safe. When people come to us, they're usually at their desperate measures. They've Googled hypnotherapy. They don't know what to expect. I almost feel and sense them gripping onto the chair, and I'm feeling their anxiety. And I would probably score them at a 9 or a 10. But even after that first session, they'd probably walk out maybe a 7. And I say, I'd take that change after an hour's work, because little by little, then your subconscious will continue to do the work.
That's even through the week.
Exactly, because your mind continues to work with that suggestion, So usually by the time they come for a second session, they're not gripping the chair, they're quite relaxed, they'll have a cup of tea. They're probably at 5. And that is the magic of it, because by the time 3 sessions in, 4 max, they're on their way and their life's back in their own hands.
And that's good. It's the power of change.
So yes, as you can tell, we're massive advocates for hypnotherapy and can't scream about it enough.
Well, before we leave, you can read the 3-season life.
I've
big
probably
therapy thing.
talked a bit too much, but a little quote, as we always often share, but the 3 C's in life, and this probably goes quite nicely with the anxiety: choice, chance, and change. And you must make the choice to take the chance if you want anything in life to change.
There you go.
With high level of anxiety, it almost feels like
All the 3
choice,
C's.
chance, and change can't happen, but you're in control. So
Choice, chance, and change, and control.
And control will make
control.
it to 4, yeah. You're in control. And if you, again, have any questions, you might have more knowledge and expertise than us, then
Feel free.
please share, because this is about change for anyone and everyone listening.
Well, for now, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Be safe.